So F1 shallow fishing, massively popular way of fishing, and the season is now upon us where at most of the venues I go to, like Sverin, Rook, Partridge, Tunnel Barn, if you're not capable of fishing for F1 shallow, then you are not going to win, because on the right peg, it is simply unbeatable. So today, lovely, bright weather, perfect conditions, we thought we'll go through all the technical aspects of covering standard F1 shallow rigs. I mean, I'm not going to go down the overshot and all that for this one. We're all about the rigs, the sexy bit, fishing for them with a float, properly shotted float, and the way I go about things at the venues where that's the way you have to do things. Do you know what I mean? If you can't overshot, you need your rig to be nice. So that's what we're going to babble with and keep things as simple as possible. I mean, go through the basic rules of what we do when choosing floats, types of shotting, bloody blah. So we're going to start deep and work our way up, or we're going to start shallow and work our way down. I'm going to start really shallow. I'm going to start really shallow and work our way down to what we do if we need to fish a bit deeper. So all comes about actually measuring distances. You know what I mean? Understanding how deep you're fishing. And with shallow kits these days, it's lovely because you get a marker on them. So if you're a bit stupid like me, you can see how deep you're fishing all the time. Really important, because I think it is a method where it's nice to have fixed ways of doing things in certain depths. So by fishing up to a certain depth, I use one way or one type of rig. The next proportion of depth, maybe 16 to 25 inches, another rig, and then something else above that. So we're going to keep things nice and simple. And I'm going to start with sort of 16-inch and below. I mean, the really shallow type fishing, and it doesn't get any easier when it comes to actual from the float downwards. Yeah, float choice, again, stupidly simple. I want a 0.1 dibber. I mean, I've tried a million different styles of floats in the past, from elongated rugby ball, delicate style floats, which do have a place when it's colder, to little diamondy floats like we do in the F1 shallow range, in a 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. I've tried them all. When it comes to this really shallow rig, dibber just makes it easy. You know what I mean? It's the thing whenever you're fishing 16-inch or less, is that you haven't really got to read your float too much. You either get bites or you don't. It's not often that they come really shallow, and it's easy to find out if they have, because you're going to physically see them swirling if they're anything above 8-inch. I mean, they're visually going to be there, so you can make them decisions. So we're going to talk 16-inch or less, a dibber. Yeah, 0.1 seems about perfect. Odd occasion I might swap to a 0.2 if it's really windy, but to be fair, 0.1 has enough shots to do what I need it to do in that depth. And the actual rig itself couldn't be more simple. It is literally 0.1 dibber, fixed there at 12-inch. Yeah, and I've got a bulk here at 5-inch, just above my 4-inch hook length. Yeah, I've got a 4-inch hook length there, about 12. My main line's 0.16, nice and durable, not going to mess about. But say 4-inch hook length, I use a 4-inch hook length on 99% of my shallow rigs for F1s. Yeah, be it from 12-inch in this case, all the way up to flipping 3 foot on the other one. 4-inch is fine. The only exception would be a few weird venues like Illinois, Westwood, where they feed really shallow. I might want to use a 2 or 3-inch, but that would be quite a unique circumstance. Yeah, for 99% of places, 4-inch does the job, because it keeps it a bit wafty abouty, which is important. We'll talk about that on the fishing bit. So yeah, 4-inch hook length about 12. In this case, again, I've got the ever trusty 16 MXE6, nice light hook. I use MXE6s for all of my F1 shallow fishing when it comes to banding a caster or pellet in this case. Just say, so 0.1 dibber there. This case I've got it set at 12 inches. And what I want to talk about next, say rig really basic. I mean, I'm never going to move the bulk. I might move the float up a few inches at a time to try and find where the fish are. Or I'll have multiple rigs set up, but there'll be no difference in them other than the depth and the line above the float. And what I've got in today's case, I've got two different ways of having the lash sort of thing, which is so important when it comes to F1 shallow rigs. Excuse me, it's not just about the rig itself. I mean, what's above the rig is really important when it comes to hooking bites. I mean, huge part of F1 fishing these days is having a bolt effect on your rig in some way or another. I mean, as close as you possibly can, depending what's going on. So, depending on rules, obviously there is the rule where lash length isn't an issue. I mean, it doesn't come into any rules. You can pretty much discard your float, but not. And by that, what I mean is you can push your float within an inch of your Dacron connector and get the fish to hook themselves. So your float is pretty much irrelevant. I mean, I'm not going to touch on that for today. That's a whole new video in itself. For today, it's all about the riggy bit. So when you're forced to use, at most venues, you often have a line length between your float and your pole, be it 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 12-inch at some venues. And what you have to do is still do whatever you can to maintain that tight line. So in today's case, I've gone long, which you often have to do. Like today on the clay pit where I am, it's very, very clear water, so the fish are very spooky. So they often don't want to come under that pole tip, which you get a lot of the time when you're on this really shallow rig. So if it's not solid and they're pulling it in when you've got a really short lash, often by using a great big lash, which we've got in this case, I've got a 612, nearly 18-inch lash on the end of that one, but heavily backshotted. So I have 2 back shots just above my float, which again, you have to check with the rules. It's such a rule-dominated tactic, this, that you have to check within the venue rules what you're allowed to do, whether you can use back shot that'll sink your float or not. But in today's case, what I've got is 3 inches there, and then I've got 2 number 8 back shot, which what they do is they create that lovely tight line. So it's going to be tight from my short Dacron connector all the way to the double back shot is going to be already tight. So it's only this short length here of 3 inches, which I may even bring them a little bit closer, that has to be tightened up so it does still create a nice bolt effect. As long as I hold my pole in the correct position, this does a hell of a lot for creating, that bolt effect, improving my efficiency on hooking bites, which say this would be what I try in clear water, moody fish, or if rules dictate. Often go down the big long length of line and a back shot for anything above 8-inch lash. Depending on where you're allowed, say Lindome and places like that, you can't use the back shot and you've got to do other things. But again, whole nother story. So that's me rig for fishing really, 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 really shallow, 12 inches or less, 16 inches or less. So if personal choice for you, you prefer to use a bristle float, why not? In the height of, or the winter when it's a bit clever F1 fishing, I may do myself, but 90% of the time, dibber does the job. So moving above 16 inch, and I want to swap to a bristle. So what I've swapped to in this case, I've done, forget about what's above the float for now. For today, say we're on a deep al pit. So I've set that one up at 12 inch, me dibber, in case you want to come really, really high, but with a long lash to keep my float out, my pole out the way. For actually fishing within my feed today, so here at Western, I've got a 0.2 F1 shallow float with a bristle, so I can read it. I can read if I'm getting little funny indications, I'm getting them movements on my bristle that tell me the fish are above 24 inch, then I can swap to that. Huge part of this is being able to read your float. So the deeper you go, bristles are really, really important. So you can just see them little sexy movements that you can't necessarily see on a dibber, which makes it, say, just more suitable for me to use an F1 type shallow float. So in this case, a lovely diamond carbon stem pattern that just allows me to read it when I go a bit deeper. Shot in, nothing fancy about it. I've tried a million different ways in the past of thinking the fall of the bait's important and all that, which on days it can be, but more often than not, it's fishing the right depth that counts. So what I may have today, I've got it quite simple. I've got 3 rigs set up. It may be a case of I need 6 or 7 rigs set up, all at sort of 3 or 4 inch differences, just so I can keep in touch with those fish, but while maintaining the shortest line possible or the correct style of lash, depending on rules, as I keep reiterating. But with this one, as I say, just a bulk. Nothing different than that down the bottom end. 4-inch hook length, exactly the same hook. Same again, just a bulk. It's slightly bigger bulk. On the 0.1 on the dibber, I've got a bulk of 3 number 12s. Had to go a bit lighter today because I'm using pellets. So normally I'd like to use 3 number 11s if I was fishing casters, or 2 number 11s and a 12 if I was using casters. Whereas today, because I'm using a pellet and it's so much heavier, I've got to sort of compensate that on my shotting. So I've got 3 number 12s on that one. This one, simple, it's a 0.2 flow. I've literally, on top of there, I've got 3 number 10s. Yeah, it's a perfect sort of style for fishing shallow off the bottom, but not worrying about that fall. It's a mistake I've made in the past myself, is worrying about how nice my bait looks falling. It's not about that, it's about getting the right depth. That is absolutely key. So as you can see with that, bulk on top of a 4-inch hook length, nothing in between, as simple as it gets. But with this one, I've got my shortest lash that I'm allowed. So here at Western, I think you're allowed a 6-inch lash. Is it 6 inch? It might be 8 inch, but whatever it may be. But in this case, yeah, a 6-inch lash than it may be in a particular venue's case. And in which case, all our fish is still that fixed 6-inch in between my Dacron and my float, but still always have the back shot. As long as I'm allowed a back shot 100% of the time, just to maintain as tight a line as possible for as much of me lash as I possibly can, just to hook them bites. So they're pretty much 2 different lashes I'll have, either the minimum that I'm allowed, depending on the venue, big long one, or get rid of the lash altogether, but we're not going to go into that today. And interestingly, with the back shots themselves, when I'm using a big long lash, in the dibber's case, I'll use 2 number 8s, keeps it a little bit tighter. With a nice little short lash like this, because I've only got 6-inch, it doesn't make too much of a difference. So just one number 8 cube is ample to keep things tight enough to, again, make sure you hook them bites. So lastly, and this isn't a rig that often comes out, it'll be, it's not that one, it'll be very much dependent on the venue. Yeah, often you can literally get away with those 2 rigs, with your dibber coverings from sort of 8-inch up to 16-inch, and then maybe the bristle float covering from 16-inch up to, I'm gonna say 30 at the most. I mean, most shallow water, 5-foot maximum venues, you're never gonna have to go any deeper than that. However, where we are today, very, 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 very deep. So I may need to go a bit deeper. And what I'll do in that case is have a great big rig. So in this case, I've got one set at 4 foot, which is similar to the second rig, the deeper rig. In that case, I've gone to a bristled float again. In this one, I've got a 0.3 version of our F1 shallow, still a bristle, because again, I need to read it. Yeah, whenever I've got to read it, I want a bristle. I'm not going to go into the line length on this one. You know what I mean? It is what's right for the venue. I've got an 8-inch lash with a back shut on it for as it's suited for here. But this is me findy outy rig, in that I'm probably not going to catch many fish on it, but I may need to go down to that 3 foot. So it's probably about 10 foot where I'm feeding me bait here. So by being able to go down to 3.5 foot potentially, it just tells me where there's fish in my peg still. So I've got a 0.3 float, and literally bottom end, it ain't far off just the bulk, but what I've literally got, same again, 4-inch hook length, that never ever really alters for my type of fishing, and I've just literally got 5 number 10s, just evenly spread, not quite bulked, but not far off. I mean, they've only got 1 inch apart on all of them, just so it gets down. This is more than anything, while it may catch me a few fish, this is what tells me what's in my peg. So I can put this rig in, feed over the top of it, and if I get indications but don't catch any fish, I know that there are still fish in my peg, and it's sort of a starting point to go from, that I can keep working my way shallower throughout my rigs that I've set up on the day, trying to find out where them fish are. But say, really simple, everything's the same components-wise. Elastic, I'm not going to go into that, all suited to the day. But say, this is me bit of a heavier rig that creates a nice tight line still, because I've got a bit of shot down the bottom end, keeps things tight, lets me know whether there's fish in my peg. But say, within them, hopefully that's everything pretty much covered. Say, we're not going down the overshotting route, that's a whole new video altogether. But by incorporating them little things in terms of not worried about the fall of your bait, I mean, just making sure your rig's sat at the right depth all the time and having the right type of lash needed for the venue that you're fishing, hopefully that'll cover everything you need for your summer F1 fishing.